Okay, I'm going to go over my Scotland July 2019 Heritage Travel Trip airfare budget and information, and I have decided to include in this travel to and from the airport. So it includes there were three big things, and which was the flight itself. The airline I flew through made you pay for seats. So I had flights, seats, and then my travel to and from the airport. So I'll go through in order how when I paid for these, because my goal is to be under budget, and I was until I did the transportation to and from the airport, and then I ended up over budget. So we'll start with flights. And the flights I bought on the 6th of August 2018 through an airline called Air France. Air France. So this is when I bought my flights. And I'm going to give you the flight information. So there were 4 flights. So going to SFO, to Edinburgh, and those abbreviations are SFO to EDI. I took 2 flights. The first was Air France 0083, which departed San Francisco and arrived in Paris. So that's the first one, and I departed San Francisco at 3:05 p.m. on the 4th of July 2019 and arrived in Paris, CDG, at 10:50 a.m. on the 5th of July 2019. Then from Paris, I took a connecting flight to Edinburgh, and that was Air France, so AF 1486 CDG, Paris to Edinburgh. And I departed Paris at 1:50 p.m. and arrived in Edinburgh at 3:45 p.m. So that's going to Scotland from San Francisco. I was living in the East Bay area of the San Francisco Bay Area, so that's why these airports. And then Edinburgh to San Francisco. And why Edinburgh? Because it fit with my travel kind of plans, and when I hear Scotland, the first city that comes to mind for me is either Aberdeen or Edinburgh, and it was a lot cheaper to fly in through Edinburgh, so Edinburgh it was. And so going back to the United States in San Francisco from Edinburgh, I took, and it was cheaper to fly through San Francisco than Oakland. I typically flew through Oakland because I lived in the East Bay area. And so from Edinburgh, I went to Paris for a layover, CDG, and I departed at 5:55 a.m. from Edinburgh on the 20th of July 2019, and that sucked because I had a rental car, so I got up at 2 something in the morning, which for me is an early morning if I have to get up at 2 or 3 in the morning and drive somewhere and be functioning enough to drive and interact with the people I'm returning the car to and stuff like that, and people who work at the airport. And so, yeah, so that was a really early one. It's 5:55 a.m. departure and arrival in Paris at 8:50 a.m. And then the last leg was Air France AF 0084, and that was from CDG, Paris to San Francisco. And I departed Paris at 10:10 a.m. and arrived in San Francisco at 12:30 p.m. And so these were my flights, and the total came out to, let's do that in red again, and this is in US dollars, $1,069.99. This is cheap, and at least it was at the time. And so I chose this because my budget was $1,200. I was anticipating like a $2,000 ticket. A lot of flights were $1,500–$1,600. My goal was $1,200. So I ended up a bit under budget. And I was like, that's pretty sweet. Maybe I can take a Lyft to an airport or something. And then with Air France, we'll take and move this total up. didn't know it. It was my first time flying with the airport. There was good, airline. There were good things about it and there were bad things about it. And so $1,069.99 for my flights. With Air France, it turns out, and I learned this afterwards, I got this information. They're like, reserve your seats and secure your flight and stuff. And I was like, what the heck are they talking about? And with Air France, you have to buy your seats, even if it's just like, I got coach class, like nothing fancy, no extra legroom or anything like that. And so, well, I have a little note card with the prices on this. And so on April 8th, the 8th of April, 2019, so a few months later, I bought my seats. I secured my seats. And that came out to a total of $68.44. And so I was like, woohoo, I am doing amazing. I'm under budget. My budget was $1,200. And so for these two things, the total cost, I guess we'll do this, came out to $1,138.43. And my budget was $1,200. And I was like, this is pretty good. I could take BART, I could take the bus to the airport. I don't like doing that with a big bag because that takes up space, and there's public transportation is crowded enough as is that I took one bag, a huge backpack and a smaller backpack actually, or a drawstring, something. I had a big and a small for abiding by checked bag and carry-on limits and that kind of thing. And so I'm not going to crowd someone out of public transportation. Like that was just a no for me. And I was under budget. So I was like, all right, this is cool. I was under budget by, at this point, $61.57. And then the Lyft rides came. So Lyft, if you are unfamiliar, is a company that, it's like a taxi company, only not a taxi company. It's like a electronic taxi company. And so I scheduled my Lyft ride to San Francisco Airport in advance, if I'm remembering that correctly. If not, either way, I took Lyft to San Francisco from my house in East Bay and from San Francisco to my house in East Bay. So from East Bay to San Francisco and San Francisco to East Bay. And so I had 2 flights. And so to airport. And that was the 4th of July, 2019. That ride turned out to be $51.54. I did this via taxi and it was a good $30 more at a different point in time, so Lyft was the way to go for me. And then from airport to my house on the 20th of July, 2019. That one was more expensive. It was $65.92. So the total, these, comes out to $117.46. So these were my airfare and travel to and from the airport expenses. Was the flights themselves, the seats, and Lyft rides. Food is not included because food came with the airline, Air France. So I didn't have to buy food. We got meals, full meals. Not too much food. There's not such a thing as too much food when it comes to airplane food. And it was good food. It was actually really good food. And so that was really convenient. I was anticipating having to spend money on food when I traveled via airplane, and turns out I didn't. And so that saved me money. And so let's go through. So we have flights. Came out to a total of, you got it, $1,069.99. Seats, changing up the formatting here, came out to a total of $68.44. And Lyft rides came out to a total of $117.46. And now my budget, so those are my costs. My budget was $1,200, but the total cost came out to, see where this is going, over budget. Yes, so the total over budget, we'll divide this. So the outcome is I am over budget. The total cost, we'll do this in a different color. Having fun with my markers. So the total cost was $1,255.89. Writing this like I've been writing a check, the little censor up there. So I was over budget by $55.89, which actually, I was really harsh on myself when I set my budget because I had anticipated spending $2,000 and there was the, okay, I want it under 12 or not under 12, under 15 or 1,600. And then I was like, let me set a really unrealistic budget, which was $1,200. And I got very close to that unrealistic budget. Like, if I had kept it at the original budget of $1,500 or $1,600, I would have been under by a few $100s, a couple $100s. But I decided to be harsh on myself. I was like, I want money to spend when I'm in the country of Scotland. And so, in that sense, this is kind of going to be the tone with Scotland. Super unrealistic budgets that I continuously went over. But that's okay because the real budget would have been more. So, it's a way of keeping myself in check and being like, it's okay to be over budget, and coming up with an unrealistic one and getting really close is actually, like, for me, that's a huge deal. Like, that means I'm actually doing good on being very good with my money. But there were some larger expenses in Scotland, so I might have gone over even the real budget. But the unrealistic budget, I came very close to being under or matching, but at the end of the day, I was over. I failed in meeting my unrealistic budget, and I was okay with it. So, yeah, that was my Scotland July 2019 heritage travel trip, airfare, budget, and information.